Well, hey, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Full Frontal Living podcast. And today's episode is a really special episode around letting go. And I'm going to be sharing with you a very personal story in the hopes that it'll help you reflect on things in your life that you are carrying around that you want to let go of, and what letting go of things looks like on the other side. Because so often I think that we talk about letting go like it should just be this easy thing. And it can be, but for most people, it takes time to be ready to let go of things. There's a whole grieving process that needs to go on, because if we're attached to something, in order to let it go, requires that we grieve it, which means you're going to go through feelings of anger and frustration and maybe denial of these things even happened or they were part of your life, in order to get to a place of acceptance. And you truly can't let go of something until you are ready to fully accept it. And you cannot get to acceptance without going through the grieving process and without doing some work on forgiveness. So I'm not in any exotic location today. I'm back in my office. I'm happy to be here. And I wanted to share, though, another story from the Camino. Um, that I actually wrote in my journal. Now, I've told this story to some clients because I'm always sharing. When you're behind the scenes in my world, I'm always sharing kind of the behind the scenes of what's going on for me. My clients get a much more in-depth view. And I do that intentionally because for many of the women that I work with, they are leaders in their own rights. They are not super comfortable with vulnerability because they haven't really been taught what that looks like. And for any man or woman who is in a position of leadership, it's often incredibly hard to be vulnerable, because you're leading other people. And many of them haven't been in a room before where they've talked about things that they needed to talk about or shared how they're really feeling. So when I show up for my clients and let them see my process behind the scenes, it allows them to more courageously step into having compassion for themselves and talking about the things that are weighing them down. Metaphorically speaking, sometimes it's actually physical weight that they're wanting to talk about. But in any regards, leadership can be incredibly lonely. And when we have a space where we can talk about what's really going on for us, it is absolutely transformational, and it actually makes you a more powerful leader. So the more that I show up and share, and I'm open and vulnerable with my clients and with you, my listeners, I'm doing it so that you can see that this is possible for you, that the things that are holding you back in your life, or maybe where you're afraid to speak up, that you can start to, or you can find those rooms where you can feel safe enough to be open and vulnerable. So today I'm going to be telling you the story of my rock. Now, I'm holding in my hand a rock. This is not the rock. This is like a pretty gold, sparkly rock. But I am going to be telling you the story of my Camino rock. And if you've listened to previous episodes, I went to the Camino after having a really challenging 2023. There were lots of things that happened in my life, that really created a lot of pain and suffering. And when things happen in your life that you didn't ask for, and they come unexpectedly, as this is usually what happens, and it could be a whole variety of things, from losing your job, the death of someone you love. I mean, there's so many different things that can happen: a car accident, an injury, infidelity, like you name it, things will happen, and they will happen out of the blue, and they will knock you off center. And depending on the severity of what has happened, it's going to impact you deeply, because you are a human, you are not a cyborg. We have feelings, we create interpretations, and we have to make sense of our world. And as a human, you cannot avoid pain. So although we also have the capacity to experience great amounts of joy, you actually can't reach the height of joy and authenticity and love if you're not also willing to go deep into the pain, the sorrow, and the suffering that life is going to hand you sometimes. Otherwise, you're just going to stay in this like beige middle. So, as much as I don't enjoy grief and I certainly don't enjoy pain, I do appreciate the gifts that they bring into my life. So, I wanted to share with you kind of my journey of letting go of my pain. So in walking the Camino, in going to Spain, I knew that I did not want to come home the same person that I went. Now, I did not want to put expectations on myself that I was going to have this profound spiritual awakening and everything was going to be changed in my life. Um, I knew something would shift for me because I'm just a person that lives from this growth mindset. I'm always looking for opportunities and metaphors in life to help me with my own learning and understanding of things as they're occurring in my world. Um, but it could have just as easily been a long walk, albeit it was a very wet walk. But I trusted that I would get what I needed, and that was what was most important. I wanted to let go of the pain that I'd been carrying around, but I didn't know what that would look like for me. And when we get attached to things like our pain, like our suffering, when we hold on to something, we're holding on to it because it starts to get embedded in our identity and it starts to become valuable, familiar, and safe. So when people say to me, like, Lisa, why would I hold on to this? Like, I don't want to hold on to this thing. It often comes back to the pain that you know is easier than the pain that you don't. And the familiarity and the certainty that comes with what you know is powerful enough for us to stay attached to things, even though it hurts, even though it's holding us back from stepping into our future. We will cling to it with a death grip because we're so terrified of who we will be or what might happen to us if we let it go. So letting go of whatever you're holding on to is also means you're going to be letting go of the value that that pain was giving you. So what happens is, we sit in fear, we hang on to the pain and our past because the uncertainty of the future is just too much. And all I can say, in all honesty, I was so blindsided by what had happened in my life that that uncertainty of what the future held without that pain to protect me was just unbearable. I don't know how else to describe it. It became my pain became the thing that was protecting me. It's like um, I don't know if you ever had this experience, but something bad happened to a girlfriend in the past, and then you become like a fierce protector, or you're like a mama bear with your kids. And it's like you do everything to try and protect them from that ever hurting them again. But in the process of trying to protect them, you're actually robbing them of experiencing their future or learning the lessons. And this is what our pain and suffering can do to us. It robs us from actually being able to step into that future. So while I was walking the Camino, I was aware of, this thought about like, what is it going to look like for me to let this go? And a thought popped into my head while I was on the Camino, and I realized like, man, I don't want this here. I don't want this thought on my experience. This doesn't get to be here. And I don't know if you've ever had that happen to you where you realize like you're ruminating over something all the time. So it doesn't matter where you are. You could be out for a great night out with your friends, and all of a sudden these thoughts will pop in your head of this thing you're holding on to. Maybe it's hating on your body or something that's gone on with your partner or something that's gone on with your kids. But it's like, God, I can't even go out and have fun. And now I'm thinking about this thing again that is just so toxic to me. And in that moment, when that thought popped into my head, I realized like I didn't want this to be part of my experience on the Camino. I did not want these thoughts following me along. I did not want to ruminate on them. I did not want to process them or work through them. I just didn't want them there, period. And I realized that I was the one that was choosing to let them in and become part of my experience. So in that moment, I picked up two rocks. And both of them represented things that were causing me pain in my life. And along the Camino, there's always markers that mark your way, and people typically will leave things behind on those markers. They might be loved ones or, something they're working through. Everybody on the Camino has a story. And I mean, you don't even have to be on the Camino. I think everybody just has a story in general. So that's what kind of that's what made me think like, okay, I'm gonna pick up these rocks. These rocks are going to represent these two specific pains in my life, and I'm going to carry them until I'm ready to let go of them. So I walked carrying each rock in my hand, focusing on them and pushing all of my anger, my sadness, my grief, and my memories into each of the rocks. It was almost like I could feel them swelling in my hands. Now, the first rock, I knew with every fiber of my being, it needed to go and I needed to be done with it. And the truth is, part of me didn't want to put it down because I know that carrying around that specific rock that represented a very specific pain in my life was actually easier for me. It was awful and it was painful, but it was easy. And again, like the certainty, what was I getting out of that pain? The certainty, like it was like this, but I know this pain. And it allowed me to sink into self-pity. And part of it was attached to protection. Like if I don't hold on to this pain, if I don't hold on to this, what if I get sideswiped again? What if I get hurt again? What if the pain next time is even worse? And there was a part of me that needed that attachment for as long as I did. But ultimately, I made a decision that I needed to put that rock down. And that's when things changed. So, as I said, letting go takes as long as it takes. You get to decide when you're ready to put something down. But when you put something down, that's when the work really starts. Because when you choose to let something go, what you're really doing is making a commitment to what you want moving forward. And that commitment, in part, is to not go back into the pain. So I knew that if I put down that rock, that I was saying to myself, Lisa, no more obtrusive thoughts. We're not going to dwell on this. And I didn't have expectations that I'd never have a thought about it again. That would be unrealistic. But the difference was I wasn't going to let myself go down into the gutter with those thoughts. I was going to say, Lisa, like, we're not doing this anymore. We let this go on the Camino and we are moving forward. So that commitment on the other side of letting go, of not tolerating or allowing my thoughts associated with that pain, that's the work. That was the work. And I knew in letting go that that was the commitment that I was stepping into. So, I had some tears, which sounds really weird because I really wanted to let go of that pain. But, like I said, when you acknowledge what that pain represents and what you're actually putting down and what you're committing to moving forward, it's a big deal. But I did put it down, and I have stayed true to my commitment of not going into that pain. And I'm really, really proud of that. It's been an active practice. When I make a commitment to something, I don't half-ass it. To me, commitment is 100% committed. And then that brings us to the second rock, though. The second rock was a different story. That rock, that pain I was really attached to. That rock represented all the pain that I felt and all the pain that I was holding on to. And there was so much that specific rock represented. That rock for me represented the past. And as I've said, holding on to the past, we often use holding on to the past as a way to protect us from ever getting hurt again in the future, ever feeling that pain again in the future, which the irony is no amount of holding on to the past will protect you from or save you from any future pain. But as I said, it will absolutely prevent you from accessing joy and happiness. You can't create a new future if you are dragging around the pain of the past, because you're going to find yourself constantly living in the past. So, knowing all of this and realizing what I gained from my pain, I still couldn't get myself to give up that rock. The goal was that when I got to the end of the Camino in Santiago, when I hit marker zero, that I would put that rock down and I would have this celebration and I would be free of that pain. And I got to marker zero and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And this is where the story gets really good. And this is where the metaphor that I really hope lands with you listening is so powerful. Because, I tucked that rock into my fanny pack and I carried that fucking rock to Mallorca. I carried it all through Morocco. And then I carried it back to Spain. And not only did I carry it around, I would make sure that the rock was still there. And I would almost have anxiety if I couldn't find it in my fanny pack. So think about this for a minute, right? It obviously wasn't a big rock, but it was a rock. It had some weight to it, it had some density to it. And it represented a pain that I had been carrying for over 14 months. And it was like a barbed hook in me. It was a weight. It was a literal and metaphorical weight I was carrying around. It was becoming a piece of me, right? That pain was starting to become my identity because I was so attached to it. I felt the weight of it every day. And just like my pain, right? Like the rock, I was looking, like I said, I looked every day to make sure it was still there. How crazy is that? Like, think about that. This is something I want to let go of. Yet I would actively go and make sure that that rock was still in my fanny pack. And it made me think about how many times in a day or in a week that I would um, consciously go into my pain, go into the thoughts that I was holding on to make sure, am I still hurting? Yeah, we're good. We're still hurting. We're not ready to move forward yet. Again, in this, feeble attempt to protect myself. So I knew when I got back to Spain and I went to, where was I? San Sebastian was my final week in Spain. And I really thought about how I'd pack that rock so many kilometers with me. And I knew I didn't want to bring it home, but I also knew I wasn't going to force myself to let it go before I was going to let it go. But I also knew I had to ask myself the question of like, well, what is it going to take, Lisa? What is it going to take to let it go? Because the longer you hold on to this, the more it's going to become part of your identity. And the more you are robbing yourself of the future life that you want. That was the bottom line. So, I went down to the beach on the day before I was leaving San Sebastian to go back to Madrid. And I sat on the beach for probably about 4 hours. And I held that rock and I squeezed that rock and I looked at that rock and I journaled, I wrote in the sand to myself. I did a post on Instagram. And I sat there until I felt complete, until I was ready to really acknowledge what that commitment to myself was going to look like moving forward. If I released the pain, what was I going to be committed to moving forward? And I'm going to share that with you. I asked myself what would be possible if that pain, if that rock was no longer part of my story. Because as much as I am loving telling you this story, I just thought like, God, am I really going to pack this stupid fucking rock back to Canada? Like, is this how I want to integrate back at home? Like, spent a month away and then to come back and be like, well, nothing changed for me. I still have this pain, when I knew now that it was me choosing that. So I wrote down, my commitments, and I'll share those with you. So after I listened to music, got grounded in kind of the future that I wanted, And I got myself to a place of deep gratitude, to be perfectly honest. And if you had asked me, you know, 14, 15, 16 months ago, if I could ever have gratitude for what's happened in my life, I would have struggled to get to the place of gratitude. And now I really do have so much gratitude for what's happened in my life, because it really cracked me open to so many lessons that I needed to learn for myself around, having an open heart, around things like letting go and attachment, and even different levels of commitment and boundaries. It taught me a lot. And that stupid rock, the actual physical carrying around of that stupid rock, taught me a lot. And it's going to serve my clients well in the future. My pain ultimately taught me about love and what having an open heart means. And I'm not necessarily talking about an open heart for other people, but having an open heart with myself, where I wasn't loving myself enough, where I felt like I needed to have that pain to protect myself, where I wasn't trusting myself, where I wasn't listening to my own inner knowing and intuition. So it taught me how to live a fully aligned life and what my purpose is. There's a saying that I love that is, our pain often becomes our purpose. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but for me, it strengthens my resolve as a leader, and how I'm here to support men and women discovering who they are beyond their stories that they've been told, beyond the pain that they've been carrying, beyond their past history. How resiliency isn't about strength, but the courage to let go, and how letting go is only one step towards um, redemption. So living a life committed to yourself, and gosh, this is so hard, but I'm here to support people who want to live a life committed to themselves and nurturing their hearts more. And so many of the people that I work with really struggle to do that. They struggle to meet themselves with compassion. And I know that I've had to really deepen into this even more for myself. So after this 4 hours of reflecting and journaling and crying and laughing and feeling like my heart was going to crack open with gratitude, and listening to songs like Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield, and just thinking like, this is the moment, Lisa, this is the moment that you get to release your past and fully step into whatever future you want. And it's okay to be afraid, and it's okay to be uncertain. And it's also okay to be excited about that, but that you can. I knew that I could navigate the uncertainty, because the truth is, whether I had that pain or not, I'd been navigating immense uncertainty for years. So I walked to the water, I put my feet in the sand, and I let the wash roll over my feet. And the ocean has always been a powerful place to transmute energy. I could tell you countless stories of me standing in the ocean crying and just saying, like, please just take this from me. And I believe it's her job to wash our wounds away when we're ready. That's the power of the earth, and that's the power of our oceans and waterways. I cried because I knew I was saying goodbye to my past, goodbye to my pain, and committing to my future, which, as the song said, is still unwritten. I threw it in the water. I threw it in the water, and I felt the weight fall away and that freedom wash over me. I literally could feel that blank page before me. So, you know, I don't know what will happen in the future. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, but I do know that I'm committed to living free, loving myself deeply, listening to my intuition, breaking the rules, and finding more joy and fulfillment than ever. and leading other people to do the same, leading other leaders to let go of the things that are preventing them from stepping into their highest level of leadership. And I truly feel like this year has been my initiation into my own leadership, self leadership, and elevating the other people who are meant to lead in a bigger way. Um, and the last thing I put under this journal entry was, and she lived happily ever after in a fairy tale designed by her. And that is the commitment, right? Life is part of the fairy tale life is knowing that you can create whatever you want in the world, but you cannot do that if you are bogged down by your past history. So, what are the commitments to myself moving forward? Because again, if you want to let go of something, you have to know what it is you're being committed to. So, this is what I wrote down, that my values are always first. In all areas of my life, I must be aligned, including any partnerships, whether they be with clients, friends, colleagues, romantic or otherwise. Uh, you don't have to share all my values, but my most important values, we have to be aligned. There has to be a level of commitment, of integrity, connection, the things that are most important to me, and, personal responsibility. I can only be surrounded by people who are willing to be responsible for how they're showing up in the world. And it doesn't mean that you have to be perfect or you can't have your moments. But when you know what it means to be personally responsible for everything that's happening for you in your life and your role in everything that's happening in your life, it just changes the game. And those are the people that I need to be surrounded with. Number two, I won't hesitate on living my purpose, even if it feels like I'm leaving people behind. My commitment is to myself first and to my dreams. That's what I'm stepping into. Number three, I will listen to my intuition, even if it doesn't make sense. I can trust myself and I can trust my body. Looking back, right? Hindsight is always 2020. And I really believe that when things happen to us, there is zero point in going back and looking at the past and saying, wow, I wish that had been different, or if I'd only listened to my intuition, because the truth is that if things could have been any different, they would have, and they weren't. They happened the way they happened, and they happened exactly the way they needed to happen for my growth. And what it has taught me is that on an even deeper level, I need to be dialed into my intuition. And so often our bodies our bodies speak to us every single day. But so often, women in particular, we feel something is off, but then we override it. Or what's worse is we think that we're the problem. And we might not be the problem. You might be the problem, but you also might not be the problem. But when we stop listening to those signals from our body and just be curious about what else might be going on, man, that is powerful. When you can lead from intuition, and again, even if it doesn't make sense, that's okay. It doesn't have to. Intuition isn't about your cognitive 3D brain. It's that deep sense, that deep inner knowing. And I know that everybody has experienced that in some way, shape, or form. Number four, no more wasted time. Zero tolerance. Zero tolerance for anything that is outside of um, my values. So, yeah, I'm just going to leave that one at that. Like, I am here for people who are willing to show up 100% and be in this life with me. So that goes for clients too. If you're going to work with me, if you want to get in a room with me, you better be ready to play full out 100% because I am going to challenge you. I am not here for some pussyfooting around, babying you. I am not going to stroke your suffering. I am not going to ease your pain. So am I going to acknowledge your pain? Am I going to be with you in your pain? Yes. Am I going to understand and have deep empathy for your pain? Yes. And I am also going to be the coach that is like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to figure out how you're going to put that fucking rock down. And we're going to figure out what needs to happen for you to claim the future that you want for yourself. No ifs, ands, or buts. Number 5 is I will go slow. Even if I feel like I want to speed up, it is so important to me that I slow down, and that this is really profound, and I really want you to hear this, that the destination that you want to get to is yours. And when you know the destination is already yours, time doesn't matter. You will get there when you're meant to get there. So we don't need to rush. We don't need to push. We don't need to hang on to things. We don't need to fight our way there. We can learn to stay in the process and stay in the journey of becoming the best versions of ourselves every single day. And the destination that you want, the outcome that you want, if it's meant for you, it will come to fruition. So, my question for you, as you're listening to this, or maybe you're watching it on video, if I asked you to write down what rocks are you carrying around, and then get honest with yourself about how long have you been carrying around those rocks? How often do you tell yourself, like, oh, I've got a mindset block here, or I'm working on this thing, I'm working go of letting go of this thing? Well, how long are you going to spend working on letting go of it versus becoming committed to letting it go and looking at and being honest about the value you're getting out of hanging on to it and what kind of commitments that you're going to have to make to yourself if you do let it go? Because often those are the things that we're avoiding, those commitments moving forward. Because again, like, once I threw my pain in the ocean, I knew I wasn't going in there. It was cold. I wasn't going into the ocean to retrieve it. It was saying, like, I'm done with this. This is not coming home. I'm not spending my time here. It doesn't erase what happened, but it means that I'm no longer holding on to it and living in that pain every single day. We're talking about closing the wound, allowing it to become a scar in my life, part of my story, but not my identity. And I want you to ask the same thing. And then what I'm going to challenge you to do, my dear listener, when you've got that list of things that you're really attached to, that you're really holding on to, that you keep telling yourself you want to let go of, I want you to go pick up your own rocks. Because there's something profound that happens when you have to physically carry around something that represents the bullshit that you are holding on to. The weight of it, the looking at it every day, the turning it over in your hands, the seeing it sitting on your desk. I want you to carry around those rocks. And I want you to carry around those rocks until you, my friend, my dear listener, are ready to write out the list of the things you're going to be committed to when you put it down, when you put those rocks down. So be honest with yourself. What are the rocks you're carrying around? What are the things you don't want to let go of? What are the value you're getting out of those? And be honest. Be honest with yourself, right? I had to look at the fact that I was, self-pity. I got to get into self-pity. I got to feel loved because if I brought up my pain, I would feel very loved and taken care of by the people who love me, right? Because nobody wanted to see me in pain. I didn't have to move forward. I didn't have to make any hard decisions. There were a lot of reasons that I was staying attached to that pain. I needed it for protection, or so I believed, right? To protect me from ever being hurt again. And if you've ever been hurt, let me tell you, that's a reason why so many of us keep that pain. The certainty, right? I knew the certainty of this. A colleague of mine and good friend and previous client was on the Camino, and I remember her saying, like, the hardest part is letting go. She'd been working through things for a long time, and I'm not going to tell her story, but she's like, why would I want to hold on to this pain? And I looked at her and said, because you know the pain. It's certain. You know what you're getting when you wake up in the morning. You know what you get when you're going to bed. And if that pain isn't there, who are you without that pain? What's going to fill your time? What's going to fill your thoughts? What's going to motivate you and drive you forward if that pain isn't there? So please understand, you are getting so much value out of whatever you are holding on to. And until you get honest with yourself about what that represents, you're going to have a hard time letting go. Okay? Because how can you be committed to what needs to happen if you can't first acknowledge the value out of what you're getting from holding on to it? Okay? So get your rocks. I'd love to see you you listen to this episode, I'd love to see you tag me on social media, post a picture of your rocks on Instagram and tag me at Lisa Carpenter Inc. I would love to hear your stories of what happens when you create that physical representation and what happens for you when you choose to let that go. So I am here for you as you work through your own stories. So like I said, this was a little bit of a different episode, reading, excerpts from my journal entry and talking off the cuff and navigating my own emotions as I tell this, because it was emotional. It was a big deal. And, one day I will share the entire story when the time is right. But I believe in sharing those stories when you're really not in the story anymore. And because my story isn't just my story to tell, it's not the right time. So, but even not knowing what happened, I hope you can see the entire value out of what I have just shared with you around the power of letting go of your rocks. So, thank you for joining me on this episode. If it resonated with you, I would love for you to share it. Like I said, I'd love for you to come on Instagram, tag me, or on Facebook with your rocks. But please share it with somebody if you know that they're struggling with letting go, and let's have a bigger conversation about what it looks like to let go and how we can move forward, how we can release our attachment to the past. And the only other thing I will let you know is at this time. So here's the ways you can work with me, because I got to share that. I always have to share that at the end of the episode. I still have one space available for my retreat in Whistler. I believe, oh, I'm not sure the dates. We'll put the dates I should know the dates, but they're not, they're details that I don't keep in my brain. Anyways, I think it's the second week in September. I want to say the 7th to the 14th of September in Whistler. This is a luxury retreat. I am going to be pampering everybody that's there. We are going to be diving deeper into these concepts of letting go, while also going out and being in our discomfort, right? I'm getting everybody into their discomfort with some of the activities that we have planned, but we're also going to be balancing that out with a lot of rest and restoration, nurturing. We've got a beautiful private chef flying in to take really good culinary care of us. It's going to be an amazing week. I have women flying in from all around the globe to attend this. So we've got one space left. So if that's you, or you think it might be you, by all means, make sure you send me an email at lisa@lisacarpenter.ca. I am also currently booking new one-to-one clients. So if letting go has been something that you've struggled with, if you consider yourself, an established leader, and you are ready to make sure that your insides are matching your outsides. So that's what I see with a lot of my clients, is there's an incongruency between how other people perceive them, yet how they perceive themselves. Yet they don't really have any place that they can talk about this kind of integrity misalignment. Like, they know that they are out of integrity with themselves, but they don't know what conversations they need to have to shift that. And they know where they're going, right? My clients have a clear vision of where they want to get to in their life. They just don't know what needs to happen to get there. And I can help you get wherever it is you want to go. So that's just a conversation away. You can find the information about how to apply to work with me at lisacarpenter.ca/WWM. And I look forward to meeting you and having a conversation about what those options are. I don't have much availability. So if this is something you are thinking about, do not hesitate, because once those spaces are filled, they are filled. All right. Thank you so much for listening and being here with me while I shared this powerful and vulnerable and very personal story of growth. I really do hope that it serves you. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm willing to share these stories, is because I believe that in sharing my stories, it helps other people grow and change and transform. So I appreciate you listening, and I will catch you on the next episode.